Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. Our mission is to see a world well led. And our strategy to get there? To empower leaders like you to lead every day. So let's get to work.
I'm afraid that the year is half over, which is hard to believe.
Wow.
Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. I'm Randy Gravitt.
I'm Mark Miller.
And Mark, fear is going to be a part of our conversation today. I don't know what you're afraid of. There's a lot of things I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that there are people listening who are not going to really understand how much they have an opportunity here the last half of the year to maybe run up the score. It's halftime. There's time to make some adjustments.
Yes.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's
We're
before we
into
even
fear
get
in a
into
second,
today's
but
question.
I want to talk about this for a second.
Well, we've talked about this before. We've written about this. We've tried to practice this in our own lives. If you study great coaches, many of them, I can't say all of them, but many of them have a reputation for great halftime adjustments.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago, I tried to figure out, okay, why do all these men and women have this reputation? And I think they do at least three things that are consistent. You check me on this and send us an email if you disagree. They assess what happened in the first half. Like, let's look at the stats. It's amazing how many, they know the stats the first half at halftime, right? They got people whose job is to give them the stats. So what are the stats from your first half? Second thing they do is they affirm what's working. It's like, let's don't ignore it. And hey, by the way, maybe we need to do more of that because it's actually working. And then the third thing they do is they make the necessary adjustments to try and have a better second half. And so I'm kind of excited it's mid-year because I always have a stronger second half, which I'm still not sure why I don't figure this out before the year starts.
Yeah.
But living half a year, going through that process makes my second half stronger. So I'm excited that we're at this point in the year.
I am too. And I would say, if you're listening, what are you going to do to do basically Mark's little plan there? I like that. Let's make some halftime adjustments right now and double down. And I really want to, let's run the score up in the second half. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So that'd be good. Okay. So we're talking fear today. The question was about fear. And, when I think about the things I'm afraid of, I'm afraid of heights, and you probably.
I knew you didn't like heights.
I'm not a big fan.
So
of
when
heights
I go climbing, you never have really wanted to do that.
Yeah, I go, but I was just like, it's not. I'd rather be on the ground. It's more fun for me. But that's not what they're asking here. They're saying, how do you work through the fear of failure? I know a lot of people are gripped by this idea of, what if I don't do it right? What if I'm not competent? Just this, and it can be overpowering. For a leader. And so today, we'll spend we got a couple minutes here. I think we can give leaders a couple things that they can do to work through this fear of failure that so many people have. So let's jump into that.
This is probably time for another of my disclaimers. And actually, I can't.
It's a big question.
Well, can't believe we've now done as many episodes as we have, and I don't think I've offered this disclaimer previously, but I should. I'm not a psychologist.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I want to be, and I pretend like I am, and I think like I am, and I am not a psychologist. So there are people who have this issue, and it is deep-seated, and it's going to take a professional to help them move through it. I'm not that guy. Don't think you are either.
Mm-mm.
However, I have seen many, many leaders overcome their fear of failure, or at least mitigate it. Right? It may never go away because there could be stuff really deep with origins that go back decades as to why you were gripped by this fear. So I want to honor the fear. I don't want to minimize or trivialize the fear, but I think you can move forward. And my number one advice, which I don't want this to sound simplistic, but if you will reframe failure, it could take you so much further down the road because, hey, I can make a list of a lot of failures. In fact, I don't even want to share my failures with you. But what has enabled me to move forward is what I've learned from virtually everyone. Now, you might say, if I've made the same mistake multiple times, did I really learn? Well, I'm a slow learner. But at some point, I usually will catch on. It goes back to something we said a few weeks ago about experience is not the best teacher. It's evaluated experience. So when you do fail, what do you learn from that? Oh, by the way, not for learning's sake, so that you can make the necessary adjustments as to prevent that failure in the future.
That's what I was going to say. Let's even build on our halftime discussion here. There's things that have not gone the way they should in the first half of the year. What are we going to do differently moving into the second half? We don't have to continue to do the same thing that we've done. We really do get...
Which probably shouldn't if it's not working.
I know we shouldn't, but a lot of times we just think, well, this is what we're doing. We're in the middle of the year, and we'll start something new in the beginning of the year. Like, no, we don't want to... We want to... Every day, I love the idea of assessing what happened today, what was good today, what wasn't so good today, what can I adjust tomorrow? Or if there's an event, like you talked about, an after action review. We've talked about those before. I mean, there's things that we can do in the moment to really make progress. And I do love the coach. I'm an old basketball coach myself, and we would get to halftime and make adjustments. But I want to just say, you have some timeouts, right? That you also get. And so you don't have to wait till halftime.
That's right.
Something goes wrong and you start next week and it's not going the way you want it to, call a timeout and ask yourself, okay, this is not what I want the rest of this year. I've got now 175 days left, 5 days into the second half of the year. I get to make adjustments on the fly if I need to, but I've got to pull back and be thoughtful about that and strategic about what I'm going to do different. And I don't have to make these mistakes. And I think having that mindset, I love the mindset of a coach who uses his timeouts, uses his quarter breaks. I mean, all that stuff. There's lots of opportunities to adjust.
Yeah, and we've written extensively, specifically in Smart Leadership. There's a chapter in that book. If you read just one chapter, it's called "Stop and Think."
Yeah,
and it's about the power of margin. And this is when you, to use the language of today, when you call a timeout. And it can be some of the most productive time of your entire leadership journey is when you say, what's working, what's not, what are we learning, what do we want to do differently going forward? But most of us live in a world where nobody's going to call timeout for us.
Yeah.
That we have to do it for ourselves.
So many great questions in there. One of the guys who's mentored me, coached me, Dan Webster, he two of the questions he asked is, what's missing right now? What's missing? What's confusing? Are there things? And I just think having those kind of pullback moments and saying, okay, it's going to help me know what to do to adjust. And I think those micro adjustments become powerful.
One more thing about the failure that some people are actually paralyzed by that fear.
They are.
Choose your battles carefully and remember your wins. When you try something and you win and you can recall that should help you, but also recall your failures or things that you would deem a failure and honestly evaluate the consequences, because in most situations, they're not near as dire or as dramatic as we believed they would be, or we can make them bigger in our memory than they were in reality. We can create our own drama.
That's right. We have this tendency to build them up. Like, this is going to be a hard conversation coming up, and then we get there and it's really not nearly as bad as we thought it was going to be. And sometimes our fears are unwarranted. I mean, it's just like, what are we afraid of?
Right. Right.
I'm usually, if I'm on a, if I'm not afraid to get in an airplane at 35,000 feet, but I don't like being on a trail that's not even, or the trail's a bad example, but if I get on a skyscraper or something, I don't like that, or I'm on the balcony of something real high. I'm just like, it's disconcerting. I mean, I do it.
I got it. But
I push through it, but I'm just like, I prefer to be on the ground if I can, as an example. And I think sometimes pushing ourselves to have those moments that are going to stretch us, we're going to get past them and go, that wasn't as bad as I thought. And now I'm glad I did.
But remember the wins, which might give you the confidence to go a little further and go a little further and go a little further. And you may wake up one day and find that some of those fears that have hindered you in the past don't exist.
That's right. That's good. Well, let me remind you as we close out the week here, there's greatness in you. We do not need to let fear grip us and hold us, paralyze us. We can't do that as leaders. We've got now. If you need help, Mark, you're right. If you need somebody that can help you with some deeper stuff, that's great. But most of us, we have things that we build up in our minds. They're going to be bad, and they're really you've got what it takes to do that. So let's don't forget that. Let's continue to lead well. Remember, the best leaders lead every day.